Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I hope you are all safe and well wherever you're watching from. On behalf of Intelligent Transport, Hacon and VBB, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us on today's session. As always, I am your moderator for today, Luke Antonio, the editor of Intelligent Transport. Today, I am joined by Alexander Pilz, Head of Passenger Information at VBB, Alexander Waymeyer, Head of International Projects at Hacon, and Philip Toot-Kennings, Product Manager at Hafas Mobile at Hacon as well. So following today's presentations, we are going to be moving into a live question and answer session where you will be able to pose questions to today's speakers. Remember, if you're in the audience, you can submit those questions at any point during the webinar today using the questions panel situated in the menu on the right-hand side of your screen. In today's session, we are going to be talking about how to make passenger journeys as seamless and as accessible as possible. During the session, Alexander, Philip, and Alexander will cover a number of points, including how to address the different dimensions of accessibility and social inclusion, but as well as that, taking a closer look at what transport organisations have already done to optimise accessibility in their services across the board. Without further ado, I can now hand over to the first of today's speakers. Philip, it is over to you.
Thank you, Luke. Hello, and thank you all for joining us today to learn more about accessibility and how we can enhance the passenger experience for everyone. So here's what we will talk about today. After a short introduction, I will first tell you about why accessibility is such an important topic and explain how front ends can be made accessible. Moving beyond the front end, my colleague Alexander Waymeyer will then show you how accessibility can be taken into account to create barrier-free routing. To round things out, Alexander Pilz will take you through the ways the VBB makes accessible travel possible in Berlin and Brandenburg. Following that, we will answer any questions you might have. So, why should you listen to us? Alexander Pilz has a lot of experience as head of passenger information at VBB, and as such has put a lot of effort into making travel in Berlin and Brandenburg as accessible as possible. Alexander Waymeyer started out at Hacon as a project manager and today is head of international projects. He has been involved in many innovative projects and has plenty of experience with the demands of travelers around the world, from Dubai to the US. As for myself, my name is Philip Toot-Kennings. I joined Hacon as an Android developer, and since then I have been technical lead for the front end in several research projects with a strong focus on accessibility. In my current role as product manager for the Hafas mobile apps, making sure that our services are accessible is an important part of my daily work. So a few words on Hacon. Hacon was founded in 1984, so we have access to a lot of experience in the area of trip planning. And as a member of the Siemens family, we provide cutting-edge mobility solutions that provide everything from trip planning to mobile ticketing and MaaS platforms. Our apps have been downloaded more than 200 million times around the whole world. Making seamless travel possible for everyone is an important part of our mission. And this is where accessibility becomes important because according to the World Health Organization, nearly 1 of every 7 people worldwide is living with some sort of disability. And that means more than 1 billion people. And that number by itself should be incentive enough to care about accessibility. But it goes beyond that. Accessibility is relevant for everybody, not just for people with disabilities. If we want to understand accessibility better, we first need to understand that all travelers need accessible mobility options, and that it is not only for some groups, like people with physical, mental, or cognitive impairments. Accessibility is not a special interest topic. Over the course of our lives, we all go through certain stages of experiencing reduced mobility, or we have special requirements for accessible mobility. Just think of socioeconomic aspects like children or the elderly, or rural residents with limited access to mobility. But situation-specific aspects could reduce your mobility as well. For example, I'm a father of 3 small children. Traveling with our family has its very own challenges. Carrying heavy luggage or temporary physical impairments like an injury are other examples that might influence your mobility greatly. Many people just take it for granted that something is already made accessible for them, which is good. But actually, we now need to make the next step so that all people can take it for granted. So the relevance resulting from this can be broken down into several areas. First and foremost, we have a social responsibility. Being mobile enables people to be part of the social life, so all offered services should be usable by all people. This is what we know as inclusion or inclusive design. Second, there is an economic relevance for digital accessibility. While some travelers might be eligible to use public transport for free, we lose others because the barriers of accessing mobility offerings are still too high, unfortunately. And finally, we have the legal framework that pushes accessibility. There are several directives and acts worldwide. So I just want to mention an important one from the European Union here. The EU Directive 2016/2102 was approved in 2016 and requires barrier-free access to websites and mobile applications of public bodies. If this applies to you, this is a heads up because immediate action is required, as this will be effective from the 23rd of June this year, which is less than 1 month away. The just mentioned EU directive that websites and mobility applications need to be accessible, and the laws resulting from it are often referring to one standard for implementation, which are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. The 4 main principles of WCAG are saying that user interfaces for websites and apps need to be operable, perceivable, robust, and understandable. In other words, websites and apps need to be designed so that every user is able to access every piece of information, process it, and act on it, using any assistive technologies they might need. In order to meet the needs of all groups, there are 3 levels of compliance ranging from A to AAA, or lowest to highest. This is important to know, since as of the 23rd of June this year, mobile apps of public bodies need to comply with WCAG version 2.1 on level AA. So let's see what this means in practice. Our product management, development, and testing teams have put in tremendous efforts to make our apps fully accessible and compliant with the WCAG standards and platform accessibility guidelines for iOS and Android that exist as well. This includes correct screen reader support, text sizing and scaling, sufficient contrast ratio, and the use of common wording, accessibility trip settings, and much more to create an intuitive UX and UI so that our trip planner app becomes a useful travel companion, especially for those who might need more support. We are continuing to add more and more innovative and supportive features to support accessibility, like adding Siri shortcuts on iOS for quicker voice input, supporting more languages, and through testing of new features. To provide a barrier-free routing for people with reduced mobility and enhancing the passenger experience for everyone, accessibility cannot just be an afterthought. Accessibility is an important part of our complete development process right from the start. As an important tool for making an app accessible for users with visual impairments, we have the screen reader. To give you a feeling for what using a screen reader is like, we will now show you a short video from our Android app. In the video, you can see a green rectangle around the currently selected element. On the bottom of the screen, you can find the text that is being read. After the video, I will tell you some details about making an app usable with a screen reader. So now let's first sit back and watch.
Show navigation drawer button. Trip planner. More options button. Selected trip from Hanover Zoo. Enter starting point. Set current position as start button. Trip to Bremen HBF. Enter destination. Switch departure and arrival button. Searching for departure. Search time now. Not checked. Extended search options checkbox. Search button. Trip from Hanover Zoo. Results. Navigate up button. Connections have been loaded. Today, Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Departure at 9:02. On time. Arrival at 10:39. Duration 1 hour 37 minutes. 1 change. Low emissions 6.39 kilograms CO. With bus 134 then RE1. Out of list. Departure at 9:22. On time. Arrival at 10:44. Duration 1 hour 22 minutes. 1 change. Low emissions, 4.19 kilograms CO. With bus 134 then ICE 634.
So as you've seen in the video, getting the user experience for screen readers right is not an easy task. It requires effort and attention to detail. Let's take a look at some important things to consider. Presenting the elements of the user interface in the right order and in a consistent way is a key factor in making the app usable with a screen reader. Usually, moving the focus from left to right and top to bottom works fine, since the user interface is already designed with this reading order in mind. There are situations, however, in which the logical order is more important than the visual arrangement of elements on screen. While a cancel button, for example, that is positioned at the top of the screen is easily skipped over by a seeing user, it might make sense to focus it last when using a screen reader, so the user knows what he or she is actually canceling. A screen reader can only focus a single element of the user interface at a time. That means that the user might not notice changes to the contents of another element somewhere on the screen. So whenever elements on screen change, we make sure to announce those changes. In the video, you could see the connections loaded announcement. Similarly, comparing data can be quite a lot harder when using a screen reader. Take the chip search from the video as an example. For seeing users, we can work with many visual elements that make comparisons at a glance easy. You can see those on in the images here. When all you have available is a displayed text, as you can see on the right images, comparing different chips is harder already. But when you have to have that text read back to you from the beginning every time you change focus, like from one connection to another, comparisons can get really hard. To help the user as much as we can, we put a lot of effort into constructing the read text so that the most important information is read first. So far, we focused a lot on the front end, but accessibility does not end there. Before Alexander Wehmeyer takes over, I would like to know of you where you see the biggest challenges in creating accessibility.
So for those of you watching, wherever you might be watching from, you can see we've just launched our first poll for this session, one of two. It'd be great to get your input and see what kind of challenges you might be facing. So where do you see the biggest challenges in creating accessibility? Your options are with digital offers and travel information, walking routes from and to stations, stations and stops, or vehicles. So Philip, what might you expect to see here based on your experience, in kind of focusing on this area so far, and what the biggest challenges through some of your clients have been to date?
So digital offers and travel information is a big topic. The EU directives I talked about are in some parts the reason for that, but that's something that is easily seen. When something doesn't work, the users start to complain. It's much easier in the app stores to complain about things that do not work than it is about different things. But I think stations and stops might be an interesting topic that people have issues with, because they might not always be accessible, and they might not even easily be made accessible, because changing something in an app is a lot easier than, I don't know, reconstructing a complete subway station or something.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two sides to this, isn't there? The kind of digital and physical infrastructure, like you say, changing a structure that's probably been there 50 plus years or more in some situations. It's never going to be that straightforward. So let's have a look at see what the audience thinks. So 40% say the biggest challenges are in walking routes from and to stations, and then close behind that, as you predicted, the digital offers and travel information. Now, what advice would you potentially have for those who are experiencing these challenges, and what kind of solution might you be able to recommend?
So that's a nice way to introduce the topics Alexander will talk about now. So having the right routes and taking accessibility into account there. So I think there's a lot of nice things we can do to help there, which we will hear about now, I hope.
Perfect. I think in that case, Alexander, it will be over to you.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Philip, for explaining the relevance of accessibility in mobility, and thank you all for joining. It's great to be speaking to you today. Today, I want to talk with you about the power of accessible trip planning and what we as Hacon have done over the last years to enhance the passenger experience for everyone. We at Hacon, and this refers of course also to the poll we asked you, think that accessibility must be ensured within all front ends and during all travel segments and all steps of the journey, from plan, book, pay to travel. And this is why we're constantly working on improving our mobile apps and web apps to comply with the newest standards, but also work on new innovations and front ends, like offering, for example, trip planning via voice input, as we did by creating the first trip planning application for Amazon Alexa, together with Deutsche Bahn. Also, it's just as important to us to provide reliable and fully barrier-free routing within all our trip planning services. We here differentiate in 3 major travel segments. Accessible and optimized walk routing is the first one. Accessible station and stop, the second then. And of course, the accessibility of vehicles, which I will now explain you the 3 in total in more detail. For an optimized walk routing, we can configure custom accessibility travel profiles in the trip settings of our apps, as you can see in the left image. So that, for instance, visually impaired or blind travelers will get high granular navigation instruction to help them find independently their way to the station or stop. Those profiles are configurable and can include instructions to avoid stairs and use elevators and escalators instead, adjust the walking speed or set the maximum allowed slope level, and many other factors. With our navigation feature, travelers will then either see the detailed step-by-step instructions as orientation guide on the map, or in a textual format, as you can see in the middle image. We further also worked with augmented reality and gamification elements to create a Pac-Man-like approach where the users get a street view and just need to follow the yellow dots to find the right station entrance or stop in the right direction. This approach makes the navigation so much more easier and visual and can, for example, support travelers with cognitive disabilities. Once the traveler reached the station, we can support him further with accessible navigation from station entrance to the platform section where she or he need to enter the train. As you can see in the trip detail screenshot, the app is providing the user a very high-level navigation with detailed instructions about where to go and how far. And have you seen the black border around one of the instructions? Since our apps support screen reader functionality, each navigation instruction will be read out to the user. So for example, blind people can then navigate within the station without help of someone else. At the platform, the app can then identify in which section the user is located and match this to the car order of the train. So she or he need to take. So that, for instance, a traveler in a wheelchair directly finds the wheelchair accessible coach. How this looks like, you can see in the right photo. But we haven't stopped after integrating in-station pathways, platforms, and level. We learned that more important is having the elevators and escalators, and especially the real-time status information, whether they're in operation or broken. So this information can be considered into the indoor routing, as these facilities are essential for the mobility impaired travelers. But let's pause on this for a moment, as Alexander Pilz will give you more insights on what we've done together with VBB in the last part of the session. So please make sure that you stay tuned with us. If you're now thinking, great, but our data is not ready for accessible routing, then you're bringing up a good point. Station mapping would be a precondition, but here we at Hacon also want to support you. So we created a tool that allows operators, agencies, and governments to easily create this data called the GeoEditor. The GeoEditor is an intuitive web-based editor that allows you to enrich your existing transit data by adding entries and exits, leveled platforms, and all the other pathways and relations between those elements like escalators, elevators, or stairs. And as you can see from the screenshot, it is as simple as drawing lines and connecting dots. Moreover, the GeoEditor allows you to add further details to those pathways, like the duration, the length, the number of steps, and others that will help your travelers with higher accessibility demands to navigate within your station. And recently, we've also extended our service alert and disruption management solution, the Information Manager, which is used by many operators and agencies around the world, with more powerful features to support riders with reduced mobility in case of planned or unplanned events. While the tool was already ready to easily create routing relevant service alerts and share those with the riders who are affected by these events, we've now added further features that allows you to manage the real-time status of your elevators in case of this information is either not available or won't be automatically sent from the elevator. This tool allows your team then to announce an elevator outage in less than five minutes, just by selecting the affected station and elevator, define the event period, create a customer-facing message, and publish it. So we looked at ways how we can optimize the walk routing and make stations and stops more accessible. Let's now talk about the vehicles. When it comes to accessibility of vehicles, our trip planning solution apps probably might not be able to improve the vehicle and equipment, but we can manage and present a variety of value-added information to the users. These can include to manage and show the available facilities on board, like spaces for strollers or wheelchairs. Information if the vehicle provides an accessible entry option and what kind of, and detailed crowding information per car, which not only became more important due to the pandemic situation, but was already important for a variety of travelers before, including people with anxiety disorders or people with strollers who can't travel in crowded situations. In this context, we also make use of push notification to actively inform riders before and during the trip about important updates or changed conditions. For example, we can send out messages in case that certain vehicle facilities are no longer available, or sending reminders to travelers when it is time to change or exit the vehicle, so they have enough time to prepare. And when talking about accessible mobility in vehicles, we can't forget to mention that demand responsive transport and paratransit services became more important for travelers with reduced mobility in case of major disruption in public transport, or when a full door-to-door transport from the first mile to the last mile is the only option. Those third-party on-demand mobility services, we've not only already integrated as additional travel options in many of our clients' trip planning and passenger information application, we can also support you with the entire product suite to run your own accessible on-demand services from our newest Siemens family member, Padam Mobility. Padam's solution helps you as an operator or agency in analyzing the operating area, identify the areas where an on-demand service can be beneficial, coordinate and dispatch vehicles using Padam's AI-driven algorithms, as well equip the drivers with a mobile app to pick up riders. And for the riders, the booking, payment, and usage of those services can happen in the same trip planning application they're already using. So I'm really hoping that we've highlighted the importance of accessible front ends and a fully barrier-free routing, as well as the different areas you need to consider. Your travelers with reduced mobility will thank you, since with making your services accessible, you give them back the freedom and flexibility to use the mobility offerings independently. Now, with that said, we'd like to invite you again to participate in a little survey for us to better understand what you as the audience are already doing to improve accessibility and how far you're doing down the road.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alex. So again, as Alex suggested, it's time for the audience to get involved with the latest poll. So does your organization actively take measures to improve accessibility? And your options are not yet, but it is on your to-do list. Yes, but only as required by law. Yes, but a little more than required. Yes, it's a focus topic and we're investing heavily, or we're already on track with only minor improvements required. So to bring you back in, Alex, based on your experience, where would you say the majority of organizations are in this journey, with especially with the idea of having technology in place to back up some of these efforts?
I'm always an optimistic person, so I'm hoping that that mobility is already more inclusive than it should be. Like that, people are ahead of that. I know that some agencies are still bounded or like limited by their existing vehicles and hardware. So while with the European Union directive there is now more movement, I think we're somewhere in the middle. But there's always room to improve down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you consider the kind of investment that is required, not just in technology and in platforms, but like you say, in vehicles and fleet renewal and things like that, in order to really enable the type of change that we're talking about and that we want to see as a society, when you consider the size of that investment, it is no surprise to see organizations at very different points in this journey. And I think the poll results probably show that quite well. 21% have it on their to-do list. I think it speaks volumes about how seriously public transport operators and authorities take this issue. That 35% of our audience say that it is a core topic of theirs, that they are already investing heavily in putting this right. But then there is obviously still more effort required from quite a few organizations, which I suppose is probably quite good news for Hacon in carrying out the rest of this webinar. Does this surprise you at all, this result?
Yeah, it is more than I was expecting. So it's great that people are looking at that, and while of course it's understandable that they're not already on track because there's so much to do and so much movement and mobility, it's great to see now from the audience that they are already heavily investing and focus on that topic, because it's a big group of travelers affected. So it's great that mobility can be sooner or later, hopefully sooner, accessible for everybody. So thank you for listening and participating in that poll. I look forward to your questions at the end. And now I'm really delighted to hand over to Alexander Pilz from VBB, the Public Transport Authority for Berlin and the German state of Brandenburg, who have a real commitment to improve accessibility within the VBB service area in their customer-facing application. And we as Hacon are delighted to work with them as a mobility partner for many, many years now. So over to you, Alex.
Hello. Okay. Thanks, Alex and Luke. Yeah, let's switch the point of view from the system vendor to the business customer of Hacon. Yeah, we are doing since many years things concerning barrier-free passenger information. What does it mean? Yeah, where are we? We are situated in the northeast of Germany. We are transport authority covering 2 federal states of Berlin and Brandenburg. And yeah, we have a lot of roles: tariff affair, distribution of revenue sharing, planning, design, passenger information. And one of all the topics is the major topic of barrier-free passenger information and whatever. So principle, not complicated, but it's a challenging thing that we will have in the northeast of our area. You see the Uckermark. At any regions we have there less than 2 people at a square kilometer. In Berlin, we have at 900 square kilometers, 3.5 million inhabitants. And so that's a problem to bring similar service level and information level to all the customers who are commuting or traveling through the VBB area. Yeah, we have a lot of lines. We have a lot of surface lines and railway station, but we have in city of Berlin a lot of metro station under the earth, and they need elevators and escalators to switch between the station levels. And that's a very important thing that we have covered in the last year. But at first, we do offering a lot of service by web app and app to the customers. And concerning the especially blind people, a lot of services are not useful for them. Maybe car sharing or bike sharing things are not in the focus of that group, and so it's very important that the software can skip by screen reader or voice recognition systems the unusual things for the customer. So that was a very hard point that we have waited a lot of years for. We started in the early 2006 with the first travel planner for the impaired people, and I think it's 2 years ago we launched the brand new web app and the brand new VBB app from Hacon, and so we have now that functionalities that not every information we have is given to that customer group. But now to the information and the trip profiles that we offer to the customer. You have the regular mode. Every customer use start, destination, and search. But we have the options for that people who need more information concerning barrier-free. We are offering predefined profiles. That means non-barrier-free route, barrier-free route, or with limited access. And if you use that profiles, you have a predefined settings for walkaways, maybe for can do some steps, or I try to avoid changes. And sometimes people from the group of the intellectual disease like to avoid overcrowded station, and so they have the chance to say, okay, I know at the major time one station will be overcrowded. I choose, please do not change at that stop, and so it will happen that you will get another route. So that's interesting for not only the people with a barrier-free needs, maybe elderly people or kids are using that too, because they are going more liked by lift or by ramp if they have a bike or bicycle within. So it's a principle a scheme of how our app is working. And we came to data. What we have need in the past is the status of the elevators and escalators, and we have 3 operators in our area who are operating lifts and escalators. And so we have done in 2012 a joint venture with a non-governmental organization, the so-called Sozialhelden. They collected all the data from the operators, and yeah, our job from VBB side was to gather and harmonize all this, the IDs of the lifts and escalators, brought it to a real data management. And so, and the result, we do have an harmonized feed for all the elevators in our area, and we will deliver it back to the trip planner from S-Bahn and BBG and Deutsche Bahn and our trip planner. And also we offering an API on our RSS feed for that, so that third parties can develop own service on that base. It was a hard job. It took a lot of time from having this information to bring it into a routing. That means if you have any disturbance and at a station, that an elevator is not running for maintenance reason, or maybe because it's broken, the Hacon algorithm will use that information and give you alternative suggestions, so that you can reach your destination via another route. So for example, you will see on the right side the planned route, and with a little mark under that with a yellow sign with a red line cross. So that's a planned route, and with a remark, it's not usable for that reason, either for the barrier-free reason, and so you will get the alternative route below. So we have two choices to do that. The first thing is maybe that you will get an alternative route with an other mode of transport. And that example, you will have it's a mid subway line in the north of Berlin. So at the station Leopoldplatz is an elevator broken, and so you see on the left side some alternative route suggestions. And we have here the remark that is only in German, that the elevator is out of service. So another option for that is that you will have for the same example, not a route with another mode of transport, because it's a station Leopoldplatz with platform on left and right from the tracks. And so you have the opportunity to overrun this station, getting to the next station called Seestraße. Then you can change the one platform from one side to the other side, and you can take then the southbound line and can disembark Leopoldplatz by elevator. And it took 5 minutes longer. So that are the issues concerning elevators. It's a hard work to keep all the data alive and actual, and ID management. It's a really hard thing, but we have done. So that was what we have. A little blink view in the workshop. What are the next steps? We will have, or Berlin will have, in June 2023, the so-called Special Olympic World Games that are similar like the Olympic Games for the people with intellectual disabilities. That's a very, very special target group, and to be honest, we haven't done yet any specialized thing for them. They participate from other developments like the elevator thing or the routing without stairs. But this target group is very special. So what does it mean? We talked with a organization committee of the World Games. How are these people traveling? How are the mobility of them? And yeah, the answer was where they are using public transport, and they need sometimes barrier-free options. What they need is it should be easy to understanding, and it means from how is the network working, and the how is the kind of the language they are used. It means simple language, and so from all that needs concluded, we decided to enhance our so-called kids app. We have and bring more information, and we issued also from Hacon 5 years ago the so-called VBB Jump app, and that's an dedicated app for the very young target group. Means from having the first smartphone at with 6-7 years until you will understand the more complex VBB app Bus and Bahn. And it's simplified without maps, and you can swipe between predefined destinations and starting points. And so we thought if we enhance the UX and UI concerning easy language, capacity information concerning station and vehicles to have an routing option, avoid overcrowded vehicles and stations, and maybe we can add additional information concerning details along the trip. Means when I have to disembark the bus, we know that people are more orientated by maybe significant buildings on the street side, and so it's not the correct information to give them where the next station is named. They need the information, for example, after the red large building on the right, get up and prepare for disembarking. And so that's our thing we are using in the first stage. And the second stage of that project is that we will implement a so-called GuideMe application. Let me explain what does it mean. In the kids app, we have an alert function. Alert means if a kid is getting lost because they missed the train or the right station, you have an alert button, and if you press them, a little community, 2 persons who are pre-defined will getting a text message with last position and how is the capacity of the battery of the smartphone. And our idea is to combine virtual combining service who is using the smartphone as a body cam with that application. That means if somebody is getting lost at the World Games, he can call assistance, and they will overtaking the video device of the smartphone and can help, because they know it's transferred what is a station where the people is, what is a final destination of the trip, so help them to get back on the track. And so we will do that until 2022 summer, because there are the federal games as a pre-test in Berlin. Then we have the job to evaluate these with the participants, have 1 year time to bring the last enhancement into the app, and then we will see. So what are our key learnings from the history? One thing concerns the advocacy groups. We have sometimes had not the best experience with advocacy groups, because they are demanding a lot of things and impacts that the real user don't want to. So we try to get a real customer via web research. So we have had, for example, a captain of a blind football team at the university. We wrote him a mail and invited them for a test our application, and yeah, that was a definitely other experience like the members of the advocacy groups. So the second learning is, if we bring more data in our application, more service depth, other customer groups like the elderly people or the younger or will participate also from that developments. Sometimes third thing is dedicated apps is needed. We learned that it's possible to bring at the VBB app all features more or less good to the blind people. But to be honest, a UX and UI for blind people is a special thing. We are thinking about maybe why not to bring a very, very small ranged application for blind people out in the next year. And the fourth thing is barrier-free services are dependent on the availability of adequate data. That means we have around about 13,000 bus stations in the VBB area. If you would offer a service with barrier-free routes, you need accurate data from every stop, and that's an amount of work. And if you want to serve that service to the customer, you have to do the data work. Yeah, no service without data. So I think that was. Thanks for your attention, and I can hand over to Luke.
Thank you very much indeed, Alexander, and thanks as well to Philip and Alexander for your part in the presentation as well. I think it's incredible to see some of this work that's happening, and especially in a real world setting as well, to see how these various technologies and approaches are actually serving to make public transport that much more accessible than it has been in the past for everyday users. We can now begin the question and answer session. We have around 15 minutes remaining to get through as much of it as we can. For those of you watching at home or in the office, if you're lucky enough to be in the office, you can still submit your questions while we're going through this, just using that questions panel on the right-hand side of your screen. But for now, we will take a look at the first question. So for this person, their biggest challenge is getting people to use smartphones in the first instance. They say there doesn't seem to be a simple product in this area, especially for people with cognitive challenges. I think I'll come to Hacon and see what your insights here might be and how they might be able to tackle this problem.
Sorry, Luke, I lost the last point. Sorry, can you just repeat? That would be appreciated.
Yeah, of course. So the biggest challenge is getting people to use the smartphones in the first instance, and there doesn't seem to be a simple product in this area, particularly for those with cognitive challenges. So from your side, what would you recommend, and what steps can they take to try and encourage that amongst their users?
I mean, I agree that especially for those with cognitive, you need somebody who's educating or helping to use that. Events like the World Games in Berlin are an excellent test or pilot for bringing and learning how to onboard that people to use that. However, today smartphones and operating systems become more and more easy, and there are so many features included that can simplify the use of that. The limitation here I see is then not the hardware or the smartphone, it's the ability of companies like us to handle this kind of simplification, that it just becomes so simple and easy to use. For example, the one gamification approach we made for having a Pac-Man-like game approach to guide people to the right station, or just we also think of adding like photos of stations or stops or landmarks, so the whole journey becomes more a game for them, so they love and learn how to independently travel.
Okay, great. We're just going to quickly turn our cameras on so people can put faces to the names, which is always nice to do in these question and answer sessions. But thank you very much for your insight there. Much appreciated. And like you say, you know, there are approaches and there are great sort of test beds to be able to test these things. So for the next question, it's a technical one. For the platform, how are you getting the occupancy information, and who is the provider for that info?
Okay, I take that. There are a lot of projects nowadays in Germany to bring capacity information and occupancy information to the customer. We, as a transport authority, are demanding in a tendering contract that the operator have to deliver that information to us. And for one example, we do have it in the area. One little railway company delivering online real-time data via online stream, so we can use it in next month in our app, and we have it on the platform and the displays, and so it's a process. DB Station and Service, what the infrastructure company in Germany for the railway station is, they have a lot of projects to measure the occupancy during the day, and so it's a path we are on.
And maybe to add on that, because we also see various sources of real-time of occupancy data being available or not. For trains, we are using load weight sensors in the trains. You can use automatic passenger counting systems, but they all rely on the hardware. But we know that there are older fleets out there, older buses, paratransit buses out there who don't have that equipment available. So we think the right approach are two things. First, we are predicting occupancy by the use by trip planner requests. So we calibrate manual passenger counting and calibrate that together with the trip request we're seeing to predict and forecast occupancy. What we're doing already in Berlin, what we're doing in Frankfurt, that is one approach. The other approach we are following, and where we see maybe some improvement, is of course using the crowd intelligence out there. Of course you can do it manually and ask the people out there and ask how crowded is the vehicle. The other idea we are following is to use Bluetooth detection. So there are all these Bluetooth AirPods, headphones, other smartphones out there, and all of them have the Bluetooth on. So why not taking all those signals and try to predict that with smart algorithms, but without the need of putting in expensive hardware, so everybody can get that information.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? When you look at the various ways and the various streams of data to be able to actually accurately report that information, and to some extent then predict it based on previous patterns. It's interesting to see as well how some of that predictive kind of work has changed in the last year, with ridership levels dipping to the extent that they have done as well, and the kind of future impacts that that's going to have on things like occupancy, and being able to actually accurately report that in in these apps.
And it's
So-
actually pretty impressive how accurate guessing, or not guessing, but extrapolating occupancy data from trip searches is. So that's a really good way of measuring that, and combining that with the sensors we have in vehicles for calibration offers surprisingly good results.
Yeah, for sure. That's an excellent point. So the next question we have looks at door-to-door mobility. So with those types of solutions in place, and considering the fact that they will most likely grow exponentially in the coming years, it may not be possible for operators and authorities can control stops in the same way that they have done in the past. What are your thoughts around that, and how this market is going to change, and how the needs of passengers are changing as well, with regards to, I guess, reflecting on the last year again, you know, the ways that their needs have changed and the way that services are going to have to adapt to reflect that, and then still deliver the same kind of accessibility as fixed route services.
I mean, that's a great question, really. Mobility offerings and with mobility as a service platforms are growing, and keeping the control becomes a real challenge at the end, because new players are joining the market, and not all of them are accessible. I mean, Alexander told me some weeks ago that only a few of the taxis in Berlin are fully accessible to allow boarding of wheelchairs. And how can you now control that what you're offering in your system is fully accessible? Again, one thing is, of course, that there must be a law which is coming, that the accessible of transportation and those services and vehicles must be ensured. But also the data is, of course, important, that the data and the vehicle assets are accessible. I recently also heard that Lime in New York is testing new accessible vehicles like hand bikes, like scooters where you can attach wheelchairs. That is a great way forward. In the end, I don't think that operators need to control all of that, because they just cannot. They just need to give the users the options to opt out of certain, and the personalization. So to say, I don't want to see any bike routes, I don't want to see any car sharing routes, because they are not applicable for me. So give me that level of configuration, so I feel involved and I can still travel independently. I think this is one approach how you can tackle that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that gets to the heart of the matter, is ensuring that passengers and riders have those options, and that they are, I suppose, as transparent as possible. For anyone with kind of reduced mobility needs, it's absolutely essential that they understand what they can and can't use from an operator or authority's kind of group of offerings and services. So that's going to be massively important in the years to come. And I think, like we've seen from our poll results as well today, the progress is already underway here to correct, you know, some of the issues that have been widespread for some years, and the adoption of some technology as well to be able to improve that is making public transport and any kind of related shared mobility options as well that much easier to use. It's really incredible to see the progress. Unfortunately, I think that's just about all we have time for on this webinar. We've absolutely flown through the last hour, but guys, thank you very much indeed for your part in this session. I think it's been fantastic to see the work that you're doing, the work you've been able to do, especially in that real world setting as well, because it really shows, you know, how much progress can be made and how tangible these solutions are now. So thank you very much. For our audience, thank you as well for joining. As you leave today's webinar, we are going to present you with a very, very short survey on top of the polls you've already answered today, of course. And that's just going to ask you to rate today's webinar session. If you can just take a moment to provide your feedback, that would be fantastic. If now isn't a great time, then we will send it to you by email as well. And if you can fill that out and let us know how we did, that would be fantastic. For now, though, that is all we have time for. And on behalf of myself, Intelligent Transport, Hacon and VBB, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you to our speakers again for joining us. And yeah, do stay safe and take care of yourself. And we will see you on the next one. So thank you very much.